Hello, this is Dr. Jeff Craig. I'm the Director of Education and Workforce Development for the City of Aurora, and welcome to our very first Aurora Education Commission podcast. This podcast will hopefully shed some light on how the commission was created, what the commission is working on, how their work is impacting the community, and we'll be introducing the members of the commission in the coming weeks and months. So to give you a little background, in 2018, shortly after Richard C. Irvin became the new mayor of Aurora, the second largest city in the state, Mayor Irvin knew that this community had, in order for this community to be successful, our education system needed to be successful. He then created the Aurora Education Commission. It's the largest commission in the city. It's comprised of college and university presidents, superintendents, private and public aldermen, and community partners. The purpose was to convene education and community leaders to create community-wide access to resources for our students and our school communities. So in our inaugural podcast, today I'd like to introduce our current leadership of the Education Commission. To my right, our chairman, Dr. Adrian Talley, who's our superintendent for the Indian Prairie School District, our vice chair, Dr. Andalib Kelgadi, superintendent for the Community Unit School District 308 in Oswego, and our utility person that does everything, Secretary/Treasurer Lenore Johnson, who's the Executive Director for the Fox Valley Montessori School. So welcome to all of you to our very first podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Glad you could be here. So rather than hear me talk about you, I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourselves, your roles, how long you've been in that role, and maybe say one piece that that is specific to your role. So, Lenore, if I could ask you to start off.
Absolutely. So I've been in my current role for about 7 years, and I've been at Fox Valley Montessori School since 2013, so 12-ish years. And what's the next question?
Well, why don't you say a little bit, because it's not what everyone would think of when they think of a school. Mm-hmm. So talk a bit about what the Montessori school is.
Oh, sure. So in our school, we've been here 55 years, and our school is focused very much on individualized learning. We have a mixed age classroom, so it's 3 to 6-year-olds, 6 to 9-year-olds, and 9 to 12-year-olds. So all of the children are working within that age group. So it's individual focused, and it's all very much hands-on learning, and then they go from concrete to abstract as they get older.
Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Dr. Kelgadi.
Sure. So thanks again for having us. I'm approaching the end of my second year as superintendent of School District 308. Yes, I feel very fortunate. What I love about the district is that we span a number of communities, including Aurora. And so when the opportunity to serve on the commission came forward, it was just a natural fit, and I was just excited. And I know that our Board of Education was a priority for them to strengthen the connections with the Aurora community within our school district.
Awesome. Well, glad you're here today. Why don't you talk a bit about maybe some of the pathway that brought you to your current role, since you're now enjoying your second year, but what were some of the prior roles that prepared you for your superintendency?
It's a great question. Prior to here, I was assistant superintendent of human resources, and then for about 2 years, and then prior to that, I did 3 years as assistant superintendent of schools in a school district with 18 school sites. And I would say that those were intense years.
I bet.
But really, my favorite role was as a principal. And you'll hear many people talk about that. Just the connection of the family, the school, being able to be part of a very tight-knit, close community.
Absolutely.
Was such an empowering experience. So I've really done every part of the house in terms of that preparation to become a superintendent. And you'll hear superintendents talk about it, but really the connection you find with the board when you become a superintendent becomes such a priority.
You bet.
And I would say that I feel very fortunate that I was able to find that match with a board that really understood what it takes to really change and build on a strong system and make it even better. And that's what I found in 308.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Talley.
Dr. Craig, so I'm superintendent of Indian Prairie School District. This is my 5th year as superintendent. Indian Prairie is the 4th largest school district in the state of Illinois, with approximately 26,000 students. I'm also, as you mentioned earlier, the chair of the Education Commission. I'm in my 2nd year as chair of the commission. And so I am. Illinois is. I'm in my 5th year in Illinois, having spent most of my career on the East Coast before coming here.
And what were a couple of those roles on the East Coast?
So I, like Dr. Gelgadi, I think I've done everything but buses and food services. So I was the deputy for the Department of Defense schools, serving military families across the world. I was in charge of student services for a school system of 200 schools. And I was the community superintendent for another school system, which I had 40 schools that I oversaw. I've been a teacher, but I also agree with what Angelique mentioned. Principal was probably my favorite job. And today, in fact, I just interviewed somebody to be a principal of a middle school, and I told him that I think that role is the best job ever.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks all three of you for sharing that. That's good for people to hear. That you just didn't wake up one day and become superintendent. It takes a lot of preparation and leaders in your roles. So thank you for that. Whoever feels like they can jump in this next one first, feel free to just start in. I want to ask you to talk about some of the initiatives that you're engaging in. Name one, name two, whichever makes most sense for you. What are those top initiatives that you're currently working on in your districts and in your organization?
Well, I'll just, one of the ones that we've been working on for the last several years, and we will continue, is our mental health support. In fact, we have a mental health symposium. Our 3rd one is coming up soon. And in fact, we have school districts, including Oswego and Aurora West, and several other school districts that are working with us. And this is a symposium for both adults and children to help them help themselves with regards to mental health. I've been very pleased with the work we've done, not only within our district, but supporting more than 20 other school districts to find funds and to find a program that can be used in their district to support children. So the mental health support is a huge aspect of what we're doing. And then the other one I'll just mention, because of our referendum, we have a lot that we're doing with construction in our district. Safety and security is a huge aspect of it, and so we're doing the work of addressing the entrances to our buildings and a lot of other things that are happening.
Well, and first of all, congratulations on
I was
passing
going to say,
the
that was a
referendum.
remarkable referendum. You
Those,
should tell us the numbers of
Those
that
are
one.
not small tasks. I was tasked with passing a referendum in the district where I was a superintendent 11 years ago, and it's a lift. It's a heavy lift and lots of commitment and time. So congratulations to you and your staff.
I think our community, they supported it at 74%.
Wow,
And it
that's
was
impressive.
a $420 million bond referendum, the 2nd largest in Illinois. And so it could not have been done without our engagement of our community throughout the whole process.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I think the mental health piece, people don't understand that we are a reflection of our communities, no matter where we are. And if our communities have some challenges in the mental health realm, our schools and our kids do as well. So thank you for taking on that difficult task. Who wants to take the next one?
I'm happy to go next. So similar to you, I mean, I don't have so many buildings and staff and children in our community, but social emotional learning is still a huge part. We serve children from 15 months to 12 years old. And so it's nice to have that, and it's different levels within each program. And not to copy you, but crisis and safety is something that's always top of mind. Again, we're one building, but it's important that we have plans in place, because if you're going to do an evacuation with toddlers, what's the plan? Where are you going? All of those things. So those are probably our 2 biggest things that we're working on.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
And that's the other piece that you talk about. You've got the littles, starting at 15 months. And you think about those first 2,000 days where that brain formation is so critical. And so the work that you're doing and really setting the stage for those next phases educationally, we appreciate that effort.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I in listening to, I would build on those, and I would add to say that we're a couple of things since I've been there. One of the first things that we really did was really kind of stabilize our financial situation. Our district had gone, unlike some of our neighbors, had gone through a real period of significant austerity. And as a result of that, there'd been a ton of turnover at the district level over the last 7-8 years. And so that then contributed to really significant challenges around some of the financials. And so one of the things that I'm really proud of is our team was able to avoid a tax anticipation warrant for the first time in 20 years.
Wow.
Our district had been essentially borrowing money to make payday.
And those are costly.
Yes,
those come with a cost
yes.
associated.
It's millions,
Yes.
essentially. So for 20 years, we were able to stop that, find some significant savings. We've closed 3 contracts with 3 of our various union partners in the past 2 years. And I would say one of the wonderful things of the commission is that it also helped bridge strong partnerships. So we have a really strong partnership with Aurora University.
Yes.
And we were able to launch through state funding of a grant our teacher residency program,
That's
which
awesome.
has allowed us to essentially identify 20 individuals who are now training to become teachers in our district with a focus on those priority areas around special education and dual language and certifications in those areas. And so it's really been a wonderful development for that community. We are the largest employer in Kendall County. While we cross many municipalities, we are the largest employer in that county. And so it's been a huge wellspring of support for that kind of initiative.
That's awesome. I'm really glad that you talked about the financial aspect and the partnering. I think when I started the introduction today, one of the outcomes, probably unintended, was that networking and those partnerships between the K-12s, our post-secondaries, our internal and external partners. I think that was so huge, because I think just being able to call somebody up on the phone to ask a question, to be able to sit down like this and have an intimate conversation and be able to share where you are and what you need, I think is so important, because we can get caught up in our silos, and this is my boundaries, this is my district, these are my problems, but they're ours. And I think the more that we can help each other, and you really talked about that partnership being so critical. So I appreciate you raising that.
Well, I'll just add, I think one of the great things about the Education Commission is that we have the K-12 school districts, we have private school districts, we have the higher ed program there. And to your point, it is breaking down those silos.
Absolutely.
And I think that really gives the power of what the commission is trying to do across all of Aurora.
Certainly a strength in numbers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a random question? I was thinking about that as you were mentioning all the different constituents that we have. Has a commission ever considered and also inviting faith-based communities or a representative from an interfaith based community to the discussion? I know there's a process, and so I wonder if there's maybe an annual meeting where the faith-based community, because so many of our students and our families are very involved in their respective faith-based communities. It may be an interesting initiative that we may want to consider looking ahead.
Well, and so ironically, I mean, the 3 of you are the current leadership of the organization.
Giving us more
Back to work.
Back to work.
A recommendation or a opening up of the discussion, I think would carry a lot of weight with the city of Aurora, with whether it's the mayor. The mayor originally started this commission, so to say, hey, we'd like to be able to mix this up and have some impact from these aspects, these perspectives. I don't see why we wouldn't.
Let's think about it. Yeah.
Doesn't hurt to ask the question.
Put it on the agenda. Second to that motion? Okay.
Secretary's on it.
So I'm going to ask you to go back to those initiatives and think a little bit more about not only executing the initiative, but what do you hope the impact is on your students? I mean, you do these for a reason, not just to drive people nuts and to spend money. You do these with intention and purpose. What do you hope that impact is?
So the mental health for us began when we had some students who came to a board meeting after they attended the wake of a former student who had died by suicide.
That's tough.
And the students were asking for more support. I don't think any school system, I don't think any of them have enough mental health supports in them.
Agreed.
And so we took what they had to say, and then we were able to create these mental health clinics. And so to your point, I believe we want our students to be well mentally and socially, and they know that they have a place that they can go for support. if needed. We also wanted to break down the barriers. It's so hard to find somebody who you can find a therapist. You have to wait months.
Yes.
And for some of our families, they don't have the insurance. So we wanted to break down those barriers. And so ultimately, we're giving families what they want and our children what they need,
Yes.
and so that they can achieve academically once they are socially and mentally well.
Perfect. Thank you. Dr. Kilgotti.
Yes, I would say that a lot of the investment in stabilizing our financial was exactly for the purpose of really ensuring that we could provide the best service to our staff and our students and our families, really. One of the questions that came to me early on in my first 100 days, just a little over a year or some ago, was why don't they talk to each other and talking about the elementary, the high school, and the middle school?
Yeah.
Why can't they just do it? And then when I looked at the system in our district and I saw that there was such a thin layer of support at the district level, it really became a priority because those individuals were doing the jobs of like 5, 6, 7, 8 people. And while we often think, well, okay, well, that's what we want very thin systems, but then the burden of that responsibility falls on the backs of teachers. And so it became my priority. I want teachers to feel that they have a network of support so that they can focus on the learning and the work of being the best teacher, not on the work of the district.
Sure.
So a lot of the attention to building a much more well-coordinated system was so that we could then in turn serve well. One of the outcomes is we actually brought to the board last week, this past Monday, we brought a draft of our strategic plan,
Nice.
which includes a portrait of a learner that will be the focus of where we envision our students being, including a emotionally healthy and enthusiastic and confident student. And with that, what are the steps that we want to achieve in year 1, year 2, and year 3 in helping get to this portrait of who we envision our learners to be?
That's awesome.
I'll just add one last thing, which I think connects with Montessori, which is that one of the things that we heard a lot of our staff and our families say is that, especially around elementary, is that I want my child to be confident about school. I want them to love learning. I want them to be kind. And so what we heard a lot from our families is just the emphasis on that sense of connection and community, far less than we anticipated around how are they doing in this academic setting. Well, yes, we are committed to a high quality instructional experience. It was really resounding from our families the importance of being well connected and building those qualities of empathy, dignity, and kindness.
That whole child concept.
Yes, that really emerged. With all that's happening in the world, at the end of the day, we still care about those really deep, profound values that really makes us human.
Kind of reaffirming that those values are still important to people.
Yeah.
Lenore?
And that exactly builds right into our social emotional learning. We want them to be kind. It's not uncommon in our classroom that we have in our 3 to 6 year old classroom, they can learn to multiply by 10 by 10 is like the maximum, and then they can grab something from elementary, as you know. But when those 100 beads fall on the floor, all the kids come scrambling to help clean them up because they want to be part of that community and be kind. And so we want our learners to grow up and be part of a community and be kind and stand up to bullies and be confident talking. When they leave our school, they're going to go to a conventional program, most like, whether it's private or public, but that they can stand up and ask for help and not sit down and just struggle with whatever they're learning. So that is a big part of the social emotional, that being kind is so important. And of course, crisis planning, that's just, I think, on everyone's agenda. So nothing you can say about that everyone doesn't already know.
Those lifelong skills are beyond critical, as we've seen and witnessed that
Yes.
some of our folks don't practice all the time.
Absolutely.
So Dr. Kilgotti, I'm going to pick on you first.
Okay.
This is we've been talking about what's happening within our own purview, but I'm going to ask you to speak a little broader. What are some of the biggest challenges that educators are facing today?
You have to limit that list, narrow it down.
Well, I'll start with we were I think many of us were at least relieved with the state funding message that we got from Governor Pritzker.
Yes.
And people often look towards that Governor's State of the Address as a nod to what's coming down the pike. And so we were pretty nervous. I mean, everything from our teacher residency grants, there was just a lot of funds. Now, frankly, we are concerned because we do rely heavily on busing, both for our students with special needs and across the system. And so there were some pretty heavy cuts. And so that is looking at about a $5 million cut right there that we're thinking about how do we offset this. So I'll say funding is number one. And funding is important because it allows us to ensure that our classrooms get what they need every day and to hire the best teachers. And so funding. I would also say that a big topic on our mind is how do we continue to build on the momentum we have in our schools? I met with the principals recently, and with all that's happening in the world, and I asked the principals, so how are you sustaining in this period? And our principals said, many of them spoke up and said, we're focused on teaching and learning. And we're helping our teachers focus on the teaching and learning in our classrooms. We're focused on creating the culture of character and strong character in our schools. And that was such a moment for me because as superintendents or as leaders, we're often thinking of both the political, the social, all of that. And to hear the school leader center that, yes, that's all happening, and our job is to help our communities focus on what our core business is.
Control what you can control.
Yes, exactly. And that was really a strong reminder for me that
that's huge.
Despite what's happening out here, schools can really become these places, these havens, really honestly, for stability and continue to, I shouldn't say can become, they continue to be places of stability. And so for me, it's staying on message around our vision for our learners. So that is the thing that I think is the hardest thing, regardless of the whatever political agenda is coming down around whether it's this or that. We still have students 5 years old, 6 years old, 3 years old, coming through our doors, looking for engagement, looking to learn, excited to learn without any barriers. There is fear for some of them, anxiety based on the political climate, but that's why the school becomes such a shelter for them, because our staff can say, welcome. And when we don't do that, and that is, I think, one of the hardest things that I have found in a large district, and I'm sure Dr. Talley has served as my mentor over the last 2 years, as many of you have, but he's really, how do you build those effective systems to ensure that every teacher feels the support and can convey to those children? So to me, from my leadership vantage, that's been the biggest challenge. How do you create that sustainable, consistent message?
So I'm going to pick on you a little more.
Okay.
So how do you do that?
So
how do you do that in your district?
How do I do that in my district? So number one, ensuring that we have an effective plan. So because I'm one person, right? And so how do you ensure that the rest of the system starts to understand? So investments in professional learning. So understanding what is the agenda for learning for the year. When we are beginning the school year, it's ensuring that teachers have time. And that was a big challenge when we roll out new curriculum. We never have enough time. So how do you build a plan for effective professional learning time, number one. Number two, ensuring that we're getting the right people hired into our schools.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So whether it's a principal, a director, a teacher, a bus driver, getting that culture. And walking into Oswego and into 308 in our district just means people who really care about children.
You bet.
And when you do that over and over and over again, you have strong priorities. So that's one of the things we've also changed is our hiring practices, making sure that we are using a hiring process that's fair and equitable and addresses when there's bias in the system, but also is consistent. So we're not just picking people who look like us or feel like us, but we're picking the right person for the job.
Perfect. Thanks. Lenore, I'm going to ask you to jump in next. Biggest challenge you're facing today?
So unlike these gentlemen who have giant schools and huge districts, I've got, again, my beautiful small community.
Small but mighty.
Small but mighty, yes. So one of the things, so I, of course, had my thoughts, and I actually went and asked my teachers what their thoughts were. But learner stamina is a challenge in the children are having trouble staying with things. But also, even in a Montessori school, having the various levels of support. Even though you have a 3-year cycle, do you have the right support to meet each of those learners' needs? Because, we don't have in our school therapists, social workers, any of that stuff. So we are lucky. We're in 129, and I've reached out to them a lot for help and support, and we use title funds and that kind of thing. But we have a partnership, and they can refer students. But really just being able to meet all the learners' needs, because that's our goal anyway, right? We want to meet them where they're at and then build them from there. Because if we aren't meeting them on what 1 + 1 is, we're never going to learn how to go past that. So for us, it's, meeting them where they're at.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. And of course, you can always fall back on teacher shortage, quality of teachers, but it's really finding the passionate people, because not just anybody can be in a classroom. You cannot hire just anybody off the street to be with children. I mean, you can. It's not very effective.
Absolutely.
The learners aren't happy at the end of the day. Parents aren't happy. It's just creating more fires for you to put out. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
Dr. Talley.
Well, I'm going to pick up on something that Lenore mentioned, and that's teacher shortage. I think all of us, no matter where you are, the pipeline of teachers is getting smaller and smaller.
Agreed.
And especially those who have a passion for teaching.
Absolutely.
For those who want to be there. And so I think we have to look at how do we attract more people. And part of the issue, I think, there are many reasons why we aren't getting the teachers, is the negative dialogue that's out there about what educators are doing with children. It's for some people who want to be teachers, they're going to say, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to be pulled down by those who are outside of education talking about the work that's being done. I find it's fascinating how, maybe one shouldn't compare the two, but I will. You don't hear people talking about bank tellers and tearing them down, but you don't hear them really talking about, other professions, maybe lawyers, maybe doctors, but they want to tear down the work of these people who go in and day out to be in front of children, to educate them and prepare them for life. And so what we have to do is, how do we bring more people into this, into the profession? Because without it, we will not be able to educate our children. We need special education teachers. We need school psychologists. We need math teachers. We need science teachers. We need them all.
Well stated.
Yeah, and I remember last year, to your point, I'm so glad you mentioned this, because I remember last year I was at an honoring of seniors who were graduating. They were asked a question. There was 35 students graduating. And they were each asked, and they all had college their college acceptance letters, and what are you going to do? Every career, one teacher, one person said, I want to become a teacher, out of 35 students. And to your point, many of them, that there is the kind of pressure that they're misunderstanding about what the role is, but yet the satisfaction that comes from being a teacher is so tremendous. Not one teacher you'll meet who will say, I'm just doing it for the money. The money needs to get better, we agree. But we also know that there's a reward from the teaching practice that goes far beyond. And I think, to your point, it is a crisis in that way, that we've really, in the message has been reduced about what the impact of educators has been, and it's beyond incredible.
And there are potentially a couple, several causations. I think everyone that went to school feels like I've got this, and so I know what happens in schools.
That's
and
right.
So they have a lot of expertise out there.
So true.
And I think the other chunk of it is that you guys know, you've talked about it, the effectiveness, the quality teaching is based on great relationships. The effectiveness of a well-functioning organization, superintendent, board, cabinet, principals, is building that strong bridge of relationships. And those are hard. That takes time. That you don't Uber Eats that. You don't just dial that up. You have to work at that. And it takes a lot of time to cultivate that great climate and culture. So those practices you talk about are not simple things that we can point to, but your work is important. It is valuable. And what you do for your schools and school communities makes a difference.
You're talking about one of my 3 R's, and that is the relationship piece. The other 2 are relevance and rigor. But with the R of relationships, some may consider that to be the soft one, but it's the most important one as we develop relationships among each other. So that I know I can go to Andalib or Lenore or Jeff and say, I have a problem. And I know that they will be there to help me. The relationship that I have with my community, so that they trust what we're doing. Absolutely. That's the reason why I believe we had 74% approval rating for our bond referendum. The trust we have with students. That they know that there's an adult that's there for them, that will keep them safe, and the relationship we have with staff in our buildings and across the school districts, that's as important as well, because we will not be able to make progress if people aren't with us going forward, and you don't want to be that locomotive that has no cars behind you.
Agreed. Yep. So I'm going to ask you to think a little bit outside here. So whether it's your district office or whatever facility you're working in, you're going to hang a banner that says something you're most proud of. What's going to be on that banner? Dr. Talley, I'm going to pick on you first.
I need a little more time to think on this because it's interesting. I know I spoke about it earlier. I am very proud of the mental health work we've done. And I think if the banner were to say anything, it would say something to the effect of, we're here for you, to care for you as you develop and grow.
Awesome. Can I ask for a better statement than that? Lenore?
And if you pay by letter, that's a great.
And you what?
Great if you have to pay per letter. Your banner is very affordable. I'm really proud of our school and the collaboration internally because we work at each level. If we're having a challenge in a classroom, their first response is to go to a teacher to ask them, just like, here you can go to somebody else and ask for some help. But not only did we thrive during the pandemic and survive, we're continuing to grow after the pandemic, which was a big challenge to every school. But to ours, we made it through and made challenging choices that we had to do or decisions that we had to be made, but we still remained open and able to serve the children, which was a big deal.
Excellent.
That we don't put on a banner.
Especially if you're paying by the word.
No, definitely not.
Dr. Kilgetty?
Yeah, so I had a little more time to think about it. So I would say together we will achieve. And it's because I'm most proud of the board. When I joined the board was really looking to see a shift in climate and culture, both internally, but also across our municipalities. And so everything from really significantly stronger relationships with the village, with all of our village partners, growing those, serving on the Aurora Education Commission, to where when we presented our strategic plan this last Monday, we had 2 of our 4 unions present and presented the strategic planning process. We have parents and students who've all been a part of what I would say this really wellspring and change in culture in our district to really move from good to great. And so
Jim Collins.
We're yes, and we are just at the start. So I would say we haven't arrived anywhere, but what I can say is that together we will achieve. Awesome. And that is the banner that I'm most proud of.
Thank you for sharing that. So as we wind down the very first podcast for the Aurora Education Commission, I'm going to ask you to put on your mentoring caps and think about what advice you might give to aspiring either administrators or leaders in our education field. I'll give you a quick beat, and then I'm going to ask Lenore if you can start us off.
Yes, and you guys don't copy my answer. So I think that, really listening to your staff is important at all levels, right? So assistants have feedback on what's going on in the classroom, what they're observing with students, but really supporting your staff in the communication. I think that was the thing for me. I would encourage everyone to spend more time in the classroom, observing the teachers, not in a judgmental way. We're going to come at them with the assumption that everything they're doing is for the children and for the benefit of the children, but really just watching them so you can celebrate their wins, because days can be hard, but supporting them, if a challenge comes up with a parent, our policy is to go to the teacher first. Don't circumvent over to me, but to go to the parent first. And then, teachers keeping me in the loop so I can have their back on things and not feel like they're being essentially thrown under the bus in any kind of way. But that's the biggest thing I can say.
Awesome.
Back up your teachers, administrators.
Message loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Put that on a banner.
Dr. Kilgotti.
I think about that, and I will say that I think about when we step into an administrator role or in a leadership role, it's easy to lose sight of the core practice that we're engaged in. What you just said, Lenore, I think is really very appropriate, and I'm copying you actually. No, but I would say that. But the reason why I would argue that she can do that is probably that she's investing in her own attention, what her schedule looks like, how is she prioritizing her day. And it's easy to get pulled into multiple different priorities. But if you're not exercising, so I think for me, it's really invest in how you reflect on your practice, because no one else is going to take care of you. If you don't invest, if I didn't invest in my own attention to where I was getting coaching, whether it was as a principal, seeking out coaching and mentors along the way to help me look in the mirror and see myself, I don't think I would understand what Lenora just said as important as possible, because I would be waiting for somebody to tell me that.
You bet.
And so that personal, regular investment in your own capacity for regular, whether it's through, we talked about mental health, the mental health practice, so get a therapist, get somebody who helps you, whether it's intrapsychically or through a coach, through an executive coach, through professional associations, informal mentorships. That regular investment in those individuals who are both pouring into you, but also helping you have real talks with yourself. Those are really, I would say, paramount, and it's not in the textbook. You don't go to school, in graduate school, no one's telling you those things. But it's something, as I look back on my career, it has become the number one thing that I know has helped me stay grounded.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Dr. Talley.
Well, I won't copy either one, but I appreciate what they have to say, and I agree with them 100%. I think for anyone who is planning to become an administrator or the work of an educator, look for as many opportunities to have inroads into all aspects of the school system. What I mean by that is, I was a classroom teacher, taught 4th grade, 5th grade, 3rd grade. I could have just stayed in my classroom and that's it. But it would not have given me opportunities. It would not have given me experiences that would help me down the road. And so I think it's so important for us, or for anyone going into this, to look for those opportunities to expand your experiences, because those experiences will help you as you are making decisions down the road, and even in improving the work that you currently do. I'm so glad that one of the things I actually got to do before I became a superintendent, I got pulled into a meeting with the upper echelon of the school district about making a decision about closing for snow. I never knew what they did before.
That was good.
This was years ago. I wasn't even part of the decision-making process, but I was pulled into it. And so that cool. Gave me that opportunity. Oh, wow. Now I understand how they're doing this. Years later, I'm now superintendent, and now as I make these decisions, I can go back to that experience I had. So look for those things that you don't normally do. See how you can become part of that, even if it's just for a moment, because it will expand what you know and are able to do.
Great advice from all three of you. Well, it's easy to see why the three of you are in your leadership roles. Families and staff members that work for you and with you. should be very, very proud to have that relationship with you. So I want to thank you for all three of your comments, your wisdom, your commitment to our school committees and our kids within those committees. It's an important work. So this is our first Aurora Education Podcast, and we'll be talking to you next time. Thank you very much.